After Spy Family exploded onto the anime scene, the Forger family has been in the minds and hearts of so many fans. We got the lovable Anya and her dog Bond. We got the quirky Yor, but when it comes to Loid Forger, it's just so easy to say that he's a super cool spy. However, there's a lot more to his character than that, and in today's video, I'm going to explain to you guys why Loid's origin story directly led to him becoming a spy, and why this is going to be one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the anime once we get to it later on down the line in later seasons of the anime. So jumping right in, you've probably gathered from season 1 of the anime that Loid at one point was an orphan, and that was what led to him becoming a spy, so he can create a world where children don't have to cry anymore. But there's a lot more to it than that, and saying only that is why he did this, that doesn't do enough justice to the depth of Loid as a character. In order to properly understand this, we have to go back to Loid's childhood and further examine it. So in Spy Family chapter 62.1, we see Loid as a small child playing soldier with his friends, and even at that young age, we see that Loid had quite the talent for stealth, because he got the drop on one of his friends pointing a toy gun at the back of his head and killing him during that game at the old army storage depot. However, while his friends would praise him for his skills, Loid's own father would slap him once he learned that he'd been playing soldier, telling him that he should hope for peace and not for conflict, and believing that it was for his son's own good that he was being hard on him as he was. His father understood something that Loid didn't, which is that there are no heroes in war like there are in children's games that Loid had been playing. The only heroes in war are either dead or in prison, one or the other. People don't become heroes of war so much as they become survivors of war. War wasn't a children's game. War was a reality where the concept of winners and losers comes with heavy consequences, something life would teach Loid in due time. One day while Loid was sitting at a shop speaking to the shopkeeper, he'd asked her if she thought that he'd become a good soldier one day, which led to him being told that war was stupid. And just when he asked for the money to pay back his father for lying to him when he said that he purchased a book, when in reality he purchased a toy gun, he was knocked unconscious by a chunk of debris that had hit him, and when he woke up, all he saw around him was death. While everyone evacuated from the city, Loid's mother hugged him and shattered his reality even further by telling a young Loid, who had just asked his mother about going to school the next day and about the town fair, she told him those things didn't exist anymore. Only war existed, and they needed to leave as soon as possible. Despite being at a young age, Loid was learning that war had a very human cost. It wasn't a game like he'd been playing with his friends. War had consequences. One of those consequences was that his father never returned home, and then one day, the home where his mother had been staying had been blown up while he was away. This is what led to Loid picking up a gun for real, because there was nothing left for him anymore. Killing was the only thing that could numb the pain, which is why he eventually lied about his name and age in order to join the army. Over the years, thousands of bodies eventually lay dead at Loid's feet, and to Loid's eyes, he couldn't see an end in sight. War wasn't a children's game like he thought. The human cost was greater than he thought. War was about nations, ideologies, and ethnicity. It was about an endless series of open conflict and proxy wars. War was fought by the innocent, by the soldiers, by the mercenaries, and by those like him who were dragged into the war. War was an endless consumption of life by a monster who seemed to never have his hunger satisfied. That was the realization that Loid came to one day when he sat on top of a pile of dead bodies and wondered when he'd finally seen the light of dawn on the day of a new horizon, when war would finally have his hunger fulfilled. One day when he was stationed in the forest, he met a very young Frankie Franklin. Frankie was a drafted soldier who attempted to flee, and it would be then that he would run into Loid, who was going by the name Roland Spoofy. Though we know the two of them eventually become friends, their first encounter was anything but friendly. They were on opposite ends of the battlefield, and Loid had every reason to kill him, just like the thousands of others who died in front of him. However, this is where we have to remember the words of his father, who once asked Loid if he knew as much about the Austanian monsters as he thought that he did. Here, Loid saw firsthand what his father meant. War wasn't black and white like a children's game. War was complicated. Here before Loid was a man begging to have his life spared because he hadn't had sex with a woman before. He didn't want to die as a virgin. Here was a man who believed that the human nature was to avoid conflict and to avoid violence, but once they were given justification on violence, like a spouse cheating on a significant other, humans often gain pleasure from it, according to this man. Frankie believed that each soldier in the war were people being told reasons to justify the actions of what was going on around them. They were being lied to about the truth, being given a reason to fight, and eventually a reason to die. To Frankie, war was pointless, which was the reason he wanted to flee, because he put the pieces together. Both sides are being lied to in order to start a war. Hearing this almost caused Loid to kill Frankie, because in his mind the Austanian army was responsible for the death of his family. If he was fighting for a side that lied to him, what did that make him? A man who killed more people than he could keep count of. When Loid was injured shortly after this, it was a chance reunion with his childhood friends that would cause him to change his life and push him towards becoming a spy. The operation that his friends were sent on would result in their death. It made Loid wonder, what if he knew the information for the operation? What if he could have saved them? War itself hadn't changed. It was still the same, but war had changed Loid, especially after his conversation with Frankie. Loid's thoughts were pretty clear. There was a lot he didn't know, and that wasn't acceptable. Ignorance isn't bliss. Ignorance is weakness. Ignorance is a sin. Those were thoughts that Loid was coming to grips with in order to stay alive. He couldn't remain ignorant, blindly following the orders on the battlefield. In order to survive, he needed to become someone else. No, he needed to become something else. And he'd been given a chance when a strange man appeared in front of him and revealed Loid's true name to his face, showing Loid that there was value in knowledge. A secret Loid thought no one knew, this man had uncovered. This man had an edge on him, which gave him power, which means that power meant that he was in control for the moment, which means that Loid had no choice but to listen to him and eventually join the military intelligence unit or risk being court-martialed. It would be then that Loid would be given the opportunity to become both someone else and something else, because he was told to throw away his real name, throw away his fake name, his rank, everything that he was prior to this. It didn't matter anymore. He would need to be molded into something else altogether, something that wasn't a normal man. He would need to be molded into someone suspicious of everyone, searching to learn the truths that many people kept hidden. Also, he could help bring an end to the war. It would be in the time afterwards that Loid would meet his handler, the very same handler we see in the anime, Sylvia Sherwood, and she would begin the process of breaking down the man who Loid had previously been in order to make him into the agent we know as Twilight. War wasn't a children's game. War has a human cost that children's game don't tell you. War itself has never changed. It's still about nations, ideologies, ethnicity. It's still an endless series of conflicts and proxy battles. It's a never-ending consumption of life. That endless consumption of life is what led to Loid becoming a spy, because the only way to end war is to not fight with ignorance, but to be armed with knowledge, and to use the power that comes from knowledge to pull the levers of war in the direction you want. Those who have the power are the ones who dictate the outcomes of war, whether it be continued conflict or peace. Those who seek the answers are those who gain the power and ultimately shape the future, which is why Agent Twilight exists.